scribe of Alexandria, the year 47 BCE. When the great library of Alexandria stood at its towering height of wisdom and flame-colored marble, the world still believed knowledge was eternal. Scrolls lined walls like rivers of thought, each containing languages from a dozen empires, philosophies that danced across centuries, and secrets buried in time. In a quiet chamber near the library's eastern wing, a boy named Thales swept the floors. He was 15, son of a baker, and had never seen beyond the city gates. But he dreamed each night of foreign shores, of pyramids that whispered in moonlight, of stars that mapped the future. Though he wore a servant's robe, his heart beat like that of a scholar. Thales had one friend, a mute girl named Mary, daughter of a Nubian sailor. She delivered herbs and papyrus to the scholars each morning, her silence deeper than the scholars' arguments. Yet with Thales she communicated with gestures sharp as a falcon's wing, and eyes more expressive than any poem. Together they invented their own language scribbles in the dust between scroll racks, simple signs in the flicker of lamp oil. The chief scribe of the library, a stern man named Callimachus the Younger, paid them no mind. He walked through corridors like a statue reborn, muttering about codices and catalogues, his robes always dusted with ink. One evening, as Thales dusted the upper alcoves where few scholars climbed, he found a scroll wrapped in obsidian ribbonon artifact he'd never seen in the archives. Its tag bore a strange seal, a phoenix rising from flames. Curious, he stole away with it to a forgotten storage room. Mary was waiting, having sensed his absence. Together they unrolled the scroll. It was written in multiple tongues, layered like paint: Greek, Aramaic, Sanskrit, and others even Thales couldn't name. But one phrase pulsed beneath them all. What is remembered lives? What is forgotten burns? As they read, the room dimmed. Shadows stretched unnaturally. The ink on the scroll shimmered as though alive. The next day, the Roman fleet arrived. Caesar had come to Alexandria, and with him tension like a bowstring. Fire erupted along the docks, and the winds carried embers into the city. Panic seized, put the streets. Thales and Mary watched from the rooftops as flames reached the edge of the library. But then Mary tugged at his sleeve. She pointed not to the fire but to the scroll. It was glowing. Desperate, they returned to the archives. The scroll's light pulsed like a heartbeat. As the flames approached the outer walls, Mary held it aloft, and the firing, possibly smoke, billowed around them. But where they stood, the air remained cool. Callimachus found them amid the chaos. His eyes widened when he saw the seal, the scroll of remembrance. He whispered, a legend. Thought destroyed during the reign of Ptolemy. 8th, the building groaned. Time was short. Doom must carry it out, he said. Out of Egypt, out of danger. Take it to Syene, to the temple of memory. Thales protested. But I'm only a boy. No, Callimachus said. You are a scribe now. They fled through smoke-filled alleys, scroll hidden. In Mary's satchel, Alexandria burned. Behind them, the great library crumbled, its towers sighing into ash. But the scroll survived. They travelled by boat and camel, avoiding patrols and plague. Mary fell ill in Thebes, and Thales stayed by her side until she recovered. They met monks who spoke of stars, and dancers who remembered stories older than pyramids. They traded songs for shelter, ink for safe passage. Finally, in the sandstone hills of Syene, they found the Templar ruin, forgotten by maps. Inside, beneath a painted dome, they unrolled the scroll one last time. Its words rose like mist, forming figures, scholars, poets, mathematicians. They bowed to Thales and Mary, then vanished, leaving only warmth and the scent of myrrh. Thles buried the scroll in the temple's heart. Years later, a new library rose in the east. Its founder, a woman named Hypatia of the Second Dawn, often spoke of two nameless children who saved the world's memory. And though no records named them, the lanterns of knowledge lit every night in their honor. The clockmaker of Progin, the winter of 1410, when snow blanketed the city of Prague, and the Vltava river shivered under sheets of ice. A boy named Tomas lived above a workshop that ticked and tocked through every hour of the day. The workshop belonged to his uncle Mikulas, a master clockmaker and mathematician in service to King Wenceslas IV within its stone walls. Gears spun like constellations, brass weights hung like silent chimes, and secrets were tucked into drawers. No one else dared to open. Tomas was not meant to become a clockmaker. He was the orphaned son of a wine merchant and a singer, taken in by Mikulas out of familial duty. But curiosity hummed in his bones. He watched his uncle measure stars with wooden compasses and etched numbers into stone with trembling fingers. More than once, Tomas was scolded for sneaking into the workshop after dark, mesmerized by the balance of gears and levers, wondering how time could be captured by such fragile things. It was on a frost-bitten morning that a royal envoy arrived with news that would change everything. The king had granted Mikulas permission to build the greatest astronomical clock the world had ever seen, a clock that would not only mark hours and months, but predict eclipses, trace the zodiac, and mirror the movement of celestial bodies. It was to be installed in the heart of Old Town, a marvel for the people, a monument to human understanding. Mikulas accepted the commission with both pride and dread. It must be more than a machine, he told Tomas one night, smoke from his oil lamp curling into the rafters. It must be a voice, a soul. They began work that very week. Master blacksmiths and painters came and went. Astronomers visited by candlelight, whispering calculations in Latin and Arabic, till Mikulas spent most of his time alone in the workshop, sketching mechanisms no one else understood. But Tomas understood. When his uncle's health began to fail, wrists trembling, breath-shallow Tomas took up the tools. He carved wooden gears with infinite care, adjusted the smallest screws with tweezers, and read aloud his uncle's notes each morning. They worked side by side through the dying days of winter. Mary, a Romani girl with an eye for patterns, began visiting the shop in secret. She was a cartographer's apprentice, and Thomas had once saved her from a band of jeering boys. Grateful, she offered him something rare, maps not just of land, but of the stars. Her knowledge of the heavens filled gaps even Mikula's hadn't bridged. The three formed a quiet pact clockmaker, boy, and starmer, bound by gears and stars by summer. The great clock neared completion. It was immense. Its base held golden numbers. Its dial spun in perfect unison with the sun's arc, and 12 carved apostles marched silently behind a pair of oaken doors. Above it all, a rotating sphere depicted the cosmos' earth, sun, moon, and stars. But there was one flaw, Mikula's confessed. The clock has no guardian. He explained that time is a delicate force, easily corrupted. There must be one who listens when the city forgets, who tends the mechanism when the world is blind to its beauty. He meant Thomas. You will not be its maker, he said. You will be its keeper. Mikula's died days before the unveiling. The city wept. Thomas stood beside the clock as it rang for the first time. Bells sang. The apostles marched. The stars turned. And beneath it all, Thomas listened not just to the ticking, but to something deeper, a hum, a voice in the gears. Meri, left soon after to chart a new constellation for the Queen of Hungary. But she and Thomas exchanged letters for decades. Thomas remained in Prague, his workshop hidden behind the clock's face, where he kept his uncle's journals and a growing collection of his own. As years passed, rumors spread of the boy who never aged, who fixed the clock even as emperors rose and fell. Children swore they saw him wandering the square at midnight, carrying a lantern of starlight. And in times of great sorrow, wars, fires, plague, a clock never failed. It rang through darkness like a heartbeat. To this day, if you stand beneath the astronomical clock in Old Town Square and close your eyes just as it chimes the hour, you might hear Thomas whispering to it, the boy who became time's keeper. The song of saffron winds in the high summer of 1592, when the Mughal Empire shimmered with silk, marble, and memory. A girl named Lele wandered barefoot through the courtyards of Fatafa Sikri. She was the daughter of a spice merchant and a dancer, born under the sign of the mango moon, with eyes that saw stories where others saw stone. Her father traded saffron from Kashmir, cinnamon from Salem, and crushed lapis for artists who painted dreams on palace walls. But it was her mother who taught Lele the real trade of life, the rhythm of feet on marble, the scent of jasmine in the wind, and the poetry hidden in silence. Though girls of her age were expected to weave or serve, Lele had permission to wonder. Emperor Akbar, famed for his curiosity, often allowed unusual exceptions. Lele, who once recited a Rumi verse in the Devanaikas, had earned his interest. She speaks like she's lived twice, he'd said with a half-smile, and then forgotten her name but not her presence. So Lele roamed through sandstone archways, past sleeping elephants, under carved jarikas, where the pigeons murmured secrets. She chased echoes. Her favorite place was the Hall of Whispered Answers, an abandoned pavilion where acoustics played tricks, and voices curved like rivers. One morning, the air was thick with coming rain. Monsoon clouds rolled in like drums, and Fitefa seemed to hold its breath. Lele entered the hall and found something new. A boy sitting cross-legged, playing a wooden flute shaped like a curled leaf. He was thin, with skin like bronze and hair tied with string. He looked like no one from the court. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. He played a few notes, soft as sandalwood, and yet here I am. His name was Anwar. He was a nomad from the Thar Desert, a musician without a court, carrying tunes taught to him by wind and camel riders. His tribe had camped near the city's edge for the season, trading goatskin and lullabies. Lele returned each day. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. She danced in time with his melodies. He listened when she recited couplets older than empires. Sometimes they merely sat and watched the monsoon reshape the sky. Then one day he didn't come. She searched the pavilions, the stalls, the mango groves. His tribe had moved on, the rains having ended. No trace remained except a folded piece of parchment beneath a chipped column in the hall of whispered answers that it read, "When the saffron winds return, follow the song. I'll be waiting where shadows carry fire." Years passed. Lele grew into a young woman trained as a court poet. Her words danced in ink and flame. Men offered marriage, titles, even ships. She refused them all. None understood why her eyes scanned every horizon dot, until one day, in the year of the great eclipse, she smelled saffron on the breeze, leaving behind her silk veils and courtly titles. Lele journeyed west through Ajmer, into the dunes, beyond maps. She followed rumors of a flute player who summoned rain with his breath, of songs that made camels kneel in a desert oasis lit by fireflies and campfires. She found him, older, wiser, waiting. He played. She danced. The tribe watched in silence, as if the earth itself was listening. And from that night on, they wandered together, through salt plains and starlit valleys, from Gujarat to Khorasan, performing songs that remembered rivers and dances that healed grief. Wherever they stopped, legends bloomed. Some said they never aged. Others claimed they vanished during a storm, golden dust. But in Fitefa Sikri, when the saffron winds blow and the old stones begin to hum, children sometimes hear music from a pavilion long abandoned. And if they listen closely, they'll hear the whisper, "What waits is not lost, only hidden like a verse between breaths." Whispers of the Hudson in the autumn of 1779. As war gripped the American colonies and red maple leaves spiraled like falling flames, a girl named Eliza Rowan stood on the banks of the Hudson River. She was 16, the daughter of a clockmaker and a midwife, and she knew the tides better than most captains. Her family lived in the small village of Terrytown, a place nestled between the river and the forest, where news from the war arrived days late and in fragments. Eliza's father, a quiet man with ink-stained fingers, kept to his workshop, repairing pocket watches for both patriot and loyalist alike. Her mother, stern and soft-spoken, delivered babies by lantern light and brewed teas that could lull even the most restless soldiers to sleep. Eliza, however, kept secrets each morning before sunrise. She rowed across the misty river to a rocky inlet where the wild geese nested. There, hidden beneath a camouflaged tarp, was a cedar box sealed with wax and copper clasps. Inside were letters dozens, all of them written in a hand both delicate and sure. They were messages for the Culper ring. Though young, Eliza had become a courier for the Patriots' secret spy network. Her cousin Samuel, who served under General Washington, had trained her in codes and false trails, how to read footprints in the mud and signal from rooftops with a hand mirror. She carried no musket. Her weapon was silence. But war crept closer. One October evening, a stranger arrived into. He wore a British officer's cloak, though it was dusty and frayed at the edges. He came to the Rowans' door, asking for the time. But Eliza noticed how his eyes swept the room, how his fingers lingered over the clock's pendulum. She knew a spy when she saw one. That night she followed him through the woods, across a fallen bridge, to the ruins of an old mill where lanterns flickered like fireflies. There she saw him hand off a scroll to a man in a long blue coat. She gasped. The man in blue was not a British soldier. It was her father. The next day, Eliza confronted him. "I thought you were just a watchmaker," she whispered. He looked at her, surprised, then smiled faintly. "And I thought you only rode for the sunrise." They laughed quiet, tired laughter, the kind only found in wartime. From then on, they worked together. Her mother joined them too, stitching codes into hems of soldiers' coats, distilling invisible ink from lemon juice and crushed walnut shells. The Rowans became more than a family. They became a whisper in the woods, a ghost on the river. One winter word arrived that Major John Andre, the British spy who conspired with Benedict Arnold, had been captured just south of Terrytown. Eliza helped ferry the intelligence that revealed the plot. She never received a medal, only a quiet nod from a man in a tricorn hat who later became the first president. After the war, the Rowans returned to peace. Her father kept making clocks. Her mother brewed honey-sweet sleep tonics. Eliza, now a woman, became a teacher, but every morning she still visited the river sometimes. Children asked her what she saw when she stared across the water. Stories, she would say, written in mist. And sometimes, when fog draped the Hudson like a shawl, she would swear she saw a girl rowing through the dawn, bearing secrets that might still save a country. Put the caravan of midnight long ago, when the Silk Road still stitched the world together with spice and star-chart. There was a caravan that traveled only by moonlight. No one knew its origin, and no map ever captured its route. But once a year, under the full moon of late autumn, it would arrive at the edge of a forgotten village or a sleeping city gate without warning, and open its silken flaps to the night. They called it the Caravan of Midnight in the year 1273. A boy named Idris first saw it from the cliffs above Kashgar. He was 13, a weaver's son with a restless mind and a satchel full of unfinished stories. He saw the torches flicker blue instead of gold. He saw shadows dancing in shapes unlike any man or beast. And when he asked his mother, she said, "Don't follow it. They trade only in dreams." But Idris did not sleep that night. He waited until the house was quiet, then slipped from under his woven blanket, climbed down the hill, and approached the encampment. It smelled of cinnamon bark and something stranger like the scent of ink on fresh parchment. A tall man in a coat of moth wings greeted him. "You've come early." The man said, "I want to trade," Idris replied, "but I have no coin." The man smiled. "You've brought stories. That's worth more than gold." Inside the caravan, Idris saw 100 tents, though from outside there had been only 5. Each was lit by a different moonlight silver, red, blue, green, and, inside each one, a merchant sat beside a thing that wasn't quite real. In one tent, a woman spun music from a loom. In another, a man offered bottled memories of places that never existed. There were birds with wings made of shadow, maps with roads that appeared only after midnight, and compasses that pointed to things you'd lost. Idris offered a story about a fisherman who caught the moon and fed it to his cat. The merchants laughed. In exchange, they gave him a paper lantern that floated even without flame. They told him it would lead him home. But when he stepped out of the tent, the world had changed. It was morning. The caravan was gone. His village was not where it had been. Years passed. Idris wandered, his lantern always bobbing ahead. He told stories in markets and oases, traded tales for shelter, and slowly began to see patterns. The symbol of a blue moth on ancient doors, the scent of cinnamon on windless nights, the hint of songs in his sleep. He learned that the caravan came only to those whose hearts had turned toward something forgotten, an old promise, a lost name, a dream left unfinished. And so, when he grew old and quiet, Idris settled in a small town by a desert cliff. Each year, on the full moon of autumn, he lit his lantern and placed it at the crossroads, in case another curious child might follow its glow. One year, a girl did. She found the old man waiting beside a tent that hadn't been there the day before. He asked her if she had a story to trade. "I do," she said, "but it's still unfolding." He smiled. "Then it will be worth everything." The clockmaker's daughter in a narrow street tucked behind the fog-draped towers of Edinburgh. There stood a clock shop where time did not behave. It belonged to a man named Alistair Gray, whose fingers were stained with oil and brass, and whose thoughts ticked like a But it was not Alistair who gave the shop its mystery. It was his daughter, Moira. She was born during a thunderstorm in 1796, when all the city's clocks stopped for 7 seconds. Her first cry restarted them. From a young age, Moira could sense time in curious ways. She knew when a minute was off balance, or when a pendulum had lost its rhythm. She could fix a stopped pocket watch with just a glance. Her father, proud but wary, forbade her from touching the master clock, the great brass sentinel that towered at the back of the shop, said to be linked to every clock in the city. But on the eve of her 17th birthday, the master clock began to slow. The city faltered with it. Carriages arrived late. Church bells rang wrong. People began forgetting small things, directions. How many days had passed? Moira waited until midnight, then crept into the shop. She laid her hand on the clock's glass face. It was cold. A voice not spoken, but felt whispered, "Time be thinning." That night, Moira took apart the clock gear by gear, laying them on velvet cloth. Inside its heart she found something that should not be. A second pendulum made of glass, faintly humming with blue light. When she touched it, visions flooded her. Cities of the past, yet to be. Storms unremembered. A tall woman with hair like iron who said, "You are the keeper now." Moira spent days rebuilding the clock, not just to make it function, but to tune it to realign its balance with whatever thread of time it had slipped from. When she finished, the city stirred. Flowers opened though it was not spring. People remembered things they hadn't known they'd forgotten. And at the back of the shop, the master clock ticked once more, soft, steady, and strange. Alistair never asked what she had done. He simply handed her the shop keys. In time, Moira became the keeper of time for more than just Edinburgh. Travellers would arrive with watches that ran too fast, or memories that came from other lifetimes. She would fix them with careful hands and tea-boiled, precisely at the stroke of 4. Some say she never aged, others say she did, but very slowly, 1 second per year. One evening, long after her father had passed, and the city had grown loud with engines and wires, Moira closed the shop for the last time. She wound the master clock one final turn, placed the glass pendulum in a small oak box, and walked into the mist. No one saw her again. But in a library on Candlemaker Row, there's a grandfather clock that ticks to a rhythm no one can explain. And sometimes, just before it chimes the hour, it whispers, "Time remembers. ****, the stargazer of Samarkandin, the golden age of Timur's empire, where mosaic domes glittered like fallen constellations, and silk whispered through the streets of Samarkand. There lived a girl who read the stars before she could read words. Her name was Layla. She was the daughter of a baker, and her days were spent kneading dough and brushing sweet glaze across almond cakes. But at night she climbed the tiled minaret behind her home and traced the sky with her fingers. Her mother said she was born under a comet. Her father said she was born with her head in the heavens. The great Ola-Beg, grandson of Timur and master of the city's observatory, once came to the bakery for fig bread. He saw Layla sketching constellations into the flour spilled on the counter. "Do you know what that is?" he asked, pointing to the arc of stars she had drawn. "The dragon's tail," she said, without hesitation. "It moves faster when the moon is thin." He raised an eyebrow. "And how do you know that?" "It told me." He returned the next evening, bringing a brass astrolabe and a map inked in silver. He offered to take her on as an apprentice. Her parents agreed. though her mother wept to see her go at the observatory. Layla worked in silence beside scholars who recited numbers like prayers. She charted comets and measured eclipses, and once saw a meteor so bright it burned green in her dreams for weeks. But she also noticed strange things. Stars that shifted when no one watched. Constellations that bent like reeds in windless skies. One night, she followed a star that did not exist on any chart. It pulsed blue, then vanished. In its place, she found a scroll tucked into the observatory's oldest dome, sealed in wax, written in a language she had never seen. But when she touched it, she understood. The message spoke of a celestial door, a doorway that opened only once every 1,000 years. When a certain pattern of stars danced over Samarkand, Layla began the calculations. The door would open in 2 nights, she told no one. On the appointed night, she climbed the dome, scroll in hand, and waited. When the stars aligned, the scroll shimmered, then dissolved. A crack of light split the air before her, thin as a thread. Through it, she saw a sky that was not a sky, vast turning engine of light and memory. She stepped through. Layla was never seen again, but in the observatory's dome, a new star chart was later found, one etched in crystal, glowing faintly in the dark. Bit-mapped stars no one could name. In a language that hummed, dot at the bottom was a single note. The sky listens, if you dare to speak. Asterisk. Echoes of Pompeian, the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, when the streets of Pompeii were still alive with laughter, and the scent of baked honey cakes drifted from open-air stalls. A boy named Lucio wandered the alleys with a slate under one arm, a cat on his shoulder. He was 12, the son of a mosaicist, and his world shimmered with color tiles of lapis, gold, and ochre forming gods, dolphins, and heroes beneath his father's hands. Lucio wasn't much of an artist, but he could memorize anything he saw, and his mother said he had the ears of a poet. The summer of 79 AD was unusually warm. Merchants grumbled about spoiled olives. The goats were restless, and each morning the catamount stared at the mountain and hissed. Lucio didn't fear the volcano. He feared missing something. He snuck into villas to hear the musicians rehearse, eavesdropped on scholars debating in the forum, and once followed a traveling astrologer who spoke of stars that could burn cities. One evening, Lucio met a girl, Pone, named Elia. She had just arrived from Rome and was the daughter of a senator. Unlike other patrician girls, she wore sandals worn thin from walking and carried a wax tablet covered in constellations. "I want to map the sky from here," she said, "before it changes." They spent days exploring the rooftops, scribbling poems and constellations on scrolls and slates. Elia told him the Romans once believed volcanoes were gates to the underworld. Lucio asked if gates could be closed. Then came the thunder. It was not from the sky. The ground growled. The birds fled. Ash fell like dark snow. Lucio and Elia ran through the streets as people screamed, carrying their scrolls and cats and gods. The mosaics cracked. The air turned to stone. They fled to the temple of Isis, where the priestess had unlocked a door to an underground chamber. It smelled of oil and salt, and in the dark they read their poems by torchlight, breathing slow, listening to the world end above them. When the ash settled and silence blanketed Pompeii, they emerged covered in grey, eyes wide. The city was gaunt. They found a caravan of survivors heading north. Aaliyah's father was presumed lost, but she refused to leave her writings behind. Lucio carried what mosaics he could salvage in a linen satchel, pieces of gods now buried. Years passed. Aaliyah became an astronomer in Neapolis. Lucio built mosaics that depicted cities swallowed by shadows, but reborn in stars. Every year they met to mark the day Vesuvius erupted, to share a meal and a story. They never returned to Pompeii, but in a museum centuries later, a mosaic was uncovered beneath layers of ash. It showed two children on a rooftop, holding scrolls toward the night sky. Beneath it, scratched into the tile in tiny letters, "We were here. We saw. We remembered. Asterisk, asterisk, the midnight archivistin, the candlelit corridors beneath Prague Castle, where the stones breathed old secrets and the walls whispered. In Latin, there lived an archivist no one ever saw by day. Her name was Eliska. She arrived one winter in 1610. As snow powdered the city and the Voltivar froze thick enough to hold bonfires, the castle was quieter since Emperor Rudolph's alchemists had vanished, and his court had thinned like smoke. Still, someone kept the records in order, the imperial letters, the astronomical maps, the coded journals of vanished scholars. Eliska wore gloves at all times and spoke only to the ravens perched along the balustrade. At dusk, she lit her lantern and descended the stone stairs into the archives, unlocking doors others claimed no longer existed. Many thought she was a ghost, but in truth she was something rarer, a listener, for Eliska could hear the memories, blocked in ink. She'd been born with the gift or the curse, depending on who told it. When she read, the words echoed aloud in the voices of their writers, from the panicked scrawl of a prisoner to the careful flourishes of a cartographer watching the stars. Too loud for her to live among the others, she'd been sent to the old archivist school in Kutna Hora, where they taught her silence as devotion. Now she worked alone, cataloguing memories no one else could bear. One night, while copying an old folio bound in black goat hide, she heard something she wasn't meant to. A message not from the past, but from the future. The voice spoke in strange rhythms, half Czech, half German, threaded with symbols from a code she had only seen once before in Rudolph's cipher book. It whispered, "The lion sleeps, but the flame remains. Seek the hourglass beneath the chapel, curious and not a little afraid." Eliska waited until the bell struck midnight, then climbed the winding stair to the disused chapel near the Golden Lane. Beneath the altar, behind a loose stone, she found a leather satchel containing a brass hourglass wrapped in vellum, etched with star maps and equations. The sand inside flowed upward. Over the next night, she translated the scroll. It spoke of time loops, celestial alignments, and a scholar named Athanasius, who had predicted a catastrophe buried by history. The scroll ended with coordinates ones that aligned with the observatory tower above the castle top. So she waited. On the winter solstice, she brought the hourglass to the observatory. As the stars crossed the zenith, the sand stilled. A compartment in the floor clicked open, revealing a single scroll in a lead tube. It was written in her own hand, but she had no memory of writing it. The scroll warned of a fire that would engulf the archives in 30 years, destroying knowledge older than kingdom. Bid detailed which scrolls to save, which secrets to pass into hiding, and which truths to bury forever. Iliska followed the instructions. She smuggled documents beneath stone tiles, sealed treatises behind false shelves, entrusted ravens with coordinates. When the fire came set during a siege, long after she vanished, what remained was thought lost. But centuries later, in a quiet corner of Prague, a hidden room was found beneath the castle archives. In it were scrolls untouched by flame, and among them a single vellum note. I listened. You may now read ... The glassmakers gardening the lagoon city of Venice, where the canals whispered under bridges and the air shimmered with salt and sun. There lived a glassmaker named Matteo, who never left his garden. It was the year 1490. Venice flourished with trade and splendor, and on the island of Murano, where the finest glass was born, Matteo tended not only to his furnace, but to a hidden courtyard where glass blossoms grew. He had no apprentices and rarely spoke to his neighbors. He was once renowned. His goblets gleamed like frozen rain, and his chandeliers could catch the last light of dusk. But then he had buried his wife beneath the garden's stone fig tree, and from that day he spoke only to the wind. No one knew he had found a way to fuse memory with fire. Each morning, Matteo rose before dawn and lit the furnace. By the time bells rang across the city, he had begun shaping petals and stems from molten color, humming the song his wife once sang as she wove herbs into sachets. But these were no ordinary sculptures. When sunlight passed through them, they played whispers, the laughter of a shared dinner, the echo of a kiss, the hush of lullabies lost to time. His wife's memories suspended in bloom. Only one person saw them. Her name was Livia, a girl from across the canal who delivered firewood. She never knocked, only left the bundle at the gate, until one day she lingered. "Is it true," she asked, not expecting an answer, "that your garden sings?" Matteo, older than she'd thought, opened the gate. "Only to those who've forgotten something." She stepped inside. The garden was unlike any in Venice. Flowers of spun ruby and emerald leaned toward the sun. Vines of cobalt glass clung to trellises, and in the center stood a single magnolia tree made entirely of crystal. It hummed when the wind touched it. Livia returned every week. She began sweeping the workshop, sorting the colored powders, and learning to blow small baubles. Matteo taught her with quiet gestures. She never asked about the magnolia tree, but he knew she saw it in her dreams. One morning the Doge's men came. They had heard whispers of a glassmaker, hiding wonders not offered to the Republic. They demanded Matteo produce pieces for the court. When he refused, they threatened to close his workshop that night. He lit the furnace brighter than ever before. With Livia's help, he created one final bloomer violet rose unlike any other. It held not his memories, but hers, of a mother she never knew, of stories she was told, of music she couldn't recall but felt in her bones. He gave it to her at dawn. Take this child. If they take the garden, they must not take the song. By midday, the soldiers returned. Matteo did not resist. They broke the garden piece by piece, carting off the chandeliers and goblets. But they never found the magnolia tree, because that night Matteo melted it down. He forged its crystal into tiny spheres, sealed in copper, and slipped into the canal. The tides would carry them far. When held to the ear, each one would still hum. Matteo vanished. Some said he fled to Constantinople. Others claimed he walked into the sea. Livia grew older. She became a master glassmaker, known for her luminous flowers and haunting melodies. But she never sold the violet rose. It sat in her window until her last breath. Today, in a quiet museum near the Rialto, the rose remains. Tourists admire its hue, but if you listen closely, in the morning sun, you might hear the murmur of a garden long gone.